Okay, so as I was saying, you may need to, once you've opened up a Sketchup model, a new Sketchup model, you may need to change the units by just going via the Windows Model Info and selecting units. Then you can import, and depending on the version of SketchUp, I think you've always been able to import JPEGs and PNGs, but some versions also allow you to import PDFs, which is handy. I think that you might only be able to import one page at a time. So if your PDF is multiple pages, you'll have to you have to split it. But last resort, you can take a screenshot and then crop that and import it. It'll usually drop it straight in the horizontal plane for you, like it's done here. And there's a couple of different ways of scaling it. If you view things from the top, I can't remember I can only remember here we go. So if you view things from the top, you can see that you definitely lose quality. So some of the things aren't going to be legible, and that can cause issues if you can't actually read one of these dimensions to scale the plan. You might actually have to have the plan up on a different screen to initially scale it. And it's by no means millimeter accurate, but it's accurate enough to derive your initial takeoff in lieu of other information. I'll usually take the biggest, like the largest dimension that I can see on the plan and use that to scale it. This is sort of hopefully less error there. And in this case, it's this one over here, which I've just checked on the actual plan on my other screen here, and it's 12828. And there's a couple of ways of scanning it. Of scaling it. If you want to scale the whole model, you can just select this little tape measure here, and then just measure out that dimension. And at the moment it's only 3 meters. It's meant to be 12828 or millimeters, 12828 millimeters. And it asks you, do you want to resize the model? What I'll do, so that'll resize everything. So you can't use that method if you've already got elements in your model that you don't want to scale. So I'm going to say no to this and show you the other method. So the other method is just to take that measurement and record the size of it. So it's this figure here. And what we actually wanted was 12828. So we need to scale this part of the model by 4.304, etc. So I'll try and do that. So what you can use is this tool here, and it only selects. You can select multiple things in the model, but you can just use that tool. And then once you've started dragging it, so that motion there where I just dragged it manually scaled at 1.3, but I can overwrite this down the bottom and scale it exactly. And actually the other thing you can do, which is probably a better way of achieving that, is rather than is use your measurement tool, or this is more of a markup tool here, to actually draw a line initially, and then that'll kind of give you some confirmation that you've got it right. So this is a little bit off, so I could go and rescale that, but I'm probably not going to bother in this case. I think it's less than 30 millimeters out over 12 meters, so I'm pretty happy with that. And then the next step is getting your actual quantities. So there's, I guess, 3 types of quantities. There's 3 main types of quantities that you're going to be able to derive from this. So one's areas in the horizontal plane, and one's linear meters, and then if you have sections or elevations, you can also sometimes get areas in vertical planes. The only issue with that is if it's not sort of right angular geometry. So, for example, if you were taking this measurement off a vertical plane by looking at a sort of this is probably southerly elevation and then a westerly elevation, whatever it is, from here and here, then you'd get you wouldn't get that curvature. So that's one of the limitations. But notwithstanding that, I'll just show you the way I get the quantities. So it's pretty straightforward. I just start drawing over the top of the actual model itself. So this boundary around the outside on this plan is actually the lot boundary, and the building actually starts in here where the walls are. And I'll often go past it. So up here, that's actually not part of the building, but I now can't see the model. So the other thing I want to do is go in here and press face style, and turn this X-ray mode on, and that'll enable me to see through. But then I'll fill in these blanks and go, okay, well, just double checking what's going on here. I think this little bit out here is an outdoor kitchen in here. So this actually is going to be, this bit here is actually going to be part of the floor system. But then I can fill in some other blanks in terms of these walls, etc. as well. And you can come back in later and delete lines that don't actually belong. And generally, that's not quite right. I'll go from here. I think I'm on a little bit of an angle for some reason. Okay, here we go. Try again. SketchUp gives you this nice ability, like obviously these walls line up here, and you can sort of, it gives you, if you zoom in there, it gives you this little indication of whether you've lined up with another corner. And we've pretty much got most of our internal walls and stuff marked up here. A few more. I won't go too much further than that. I will delete some of these additional lines out that we've got here. It looks like I need a new one in here. It looks like it's some kind of other partition. I'll have to have a look at that in more detail on the plan. And then we've got a few other partitions in here, which are a little bit more complicated shape. Yeah, I think that's a door, so it's okay. Where it does get a little bit tricky is where you have so if you have a wall that starts and stops, so I think there's a wall here, just double checking this, but there's no wall here. I think that's a pre-existing retaining wall. It's sort of under. So in that situation, you have to sort of add the part of the wall that's there just over the top of the line, so you actually are able to differentiate that. Now what I've got is a bunch of floor measurements, as well as area measurements, as well as linear meter measurements. And this is a residential design, pretty small project. Obviously the budget's going to be pretty low for this type of work. So I'm not going to get too accurate on this one in terms of my horizontal plane measurements. So I'm going to have to make some kind of guess about window heights and door openings and things to subtract from the wall areas. You can sort of scale this whole thing up, like and start doing a 3D model, but it just starts taking a lot of time. I'll just show you. You can actually just grab the whole lot and then start pushing these things up. But it just takes so much time, and you sort of end up doing sort of almost drafting, to get it accurate. So it's much better to start with an estimate. You can do a little bit of verification of that. So make sure that it makes sense just to look at when you're sort of guessing your window heights or whatever it is, and then B, do a little bit of verification in terms of have a look at the sections, because the key thing there, I think, for windows and external walls is the ratio. It's the ratio of the glazing, and you want to make sure that it actually looks the same as what you're looking at on the plans. I think that's and you don't get that you probably don't get any more accuracy than 5% there, but that's enough for a small job like this. For bigger jobs, you can afford to spend more time getting it more accurate. But, so I've got some data here now. There's a couple of ways of getting measurements. What I normally do is split things up into different layers. So over here, we've got our layers here. This box here, I'll just move this up the top here so it's prominent. And I'm going to add a couple of different layers in here, and I'm going to say there's a few, and what I'm going to do is kind of split this up a little bit. So I'm going to have an outdoor ground floor areas. I'll have wet areas, so that might be tiling or whatever. Bedrooms potentially, or living, or just might put everything in another category. But you kind of match this up. You might match this up with the actual floor finishes. So you kind of kill two birds with one stone. I don't know. So these areas here. Whoopsie. So I am going to have to finish this off. That little line there, but these two areas here are outdoor, as well as this one down here. Just got to select them all, and then I just select those areas and then drop them into the correct layer. This thing looks like it might be outdoor as well from the plans. This looks like it's kitchen. So I'm going to put this, oops, I'm going to assume that this is the other wall. We call that wet area because that's laundry and bathroom. I think this is actually 2 dwellings. It was sort of like a pretty cool development that we worked on. So this one here is a bit of a mix probably, but we'll just put it in the other category. And I think the bedrooms are upstairs, so we don't actually have any carpet potentially on this floor. So what you can do over here now is you can colour by layer, and that gives you that'll also tell you if you've forgotten to add anything. So if I add another line in here now, then this is the one that I've forgotten, this red colour. So you can see that I've accidentally forgotten to actually categorise this one here. And I think this is just like a, might even be an outdoor area. Again, I'd be double checking this and just reviewing the plans a little bit more, but I want to make this quite quick for the demonstration. So I'd then drop my second floor plans in here beside this and run that same thing. The other thing I'd likely do is actually mark up the wall areas. So I'd be selecting these wall areas and I'll be creating different layers for these as well. So I can drop all these ones into an external wall category. Just be careful when you're selecting this external walls. I haven't got I should have put the curvature in here. I might come back and fix that afterwards. When you're selecting your walls, you don't want any areas in this, and I'll show you why in a minute. So I think I've got external walls here. This is not external. Something like that. Looks about right. And I can put that in an external wall layer. And then I can do the same for the internals. Now what I can do after I've done that is I can select one of these elements and I can say select all on same layer, and it's going to give me the total linear meters of the external walls. And then I just record that in a spreadsheet. I can come back to this, I can save this, I can come back to this and review it, I can change it. For example, if I go down here and make this a little bit more accurate in terms of where this wall's heading, as long as I then assign that to the correct
layer,
then I get that. I can very easily update that. Let's do that. Where are we? External walls. I'll also delete this area here. So I've got something that I can come back to, and if somebody questions me during the review process about how I came up with the takeoff, I can bring this up and check things and make sure that I didn't make a mistake or use it as evidence for the process or whatever. So the other thing that's for really big jobs, the other one that I use, so what you'll often have with really big jobs is you'll have plans, you have structural plans that have, if it's a 10-story building, you'll have structural plans and there'll be lots of beams in the floor that have different thicknesses, etc. So some beams will be 500 thick, some beams will be 800 thick, some beams will be 400 thick. There'll be some parts of the floor that'll be 300 thick, there'll be other parts that are 250. So there's all these different thicknesses of concretes on the floor, and I'll split that up in the same way that I've done here. But obviously it's a massive process. Now you can select one layer at a time, and so select this layer here, for example, which is the ground floor, and it'll give you the millimetres squared. If you want that in metres, you can just go back into your model info and change it to metres, and then you change the granularity and what it's going to snap to. And then you'll get those quantities back. So you can just get the area of the layer, or you can select the whole layer, and it'll give you the area up here. The other thing that I use is there's a library or a plugin for SketchUp called Fredo 6 tools or something like this. And what I can do is just select everything in the model, right click, and Fredo tools, report on areas. And then if I choose my units and then go by layer, it gives me the ground floor other, ground floor outdoor, and ground floor wet areas, as well as a total here. So you can even export that as a CSV, and then it's potentially ready to upload into eTool. Might be a little bit of formatting involved, but yeah, you don't get the what you don't get with this one, because this is reporting areas. You don't get the linear meters of the walls, right? Yeah. So that part, there's probably something similar that would allow you to drop something out like this in terms of linear meters, everything in the model in terms of the walls. But yeah, that's something to bear in mind as well. And then in terms of making a determination of your windows, what you can do, there's a couple of ways of doing that. So often plans will have, for small resi, you'll often get like a window schedule plan, and you can actually just drop that into SketchUp, scale it, and do something similar like this, and you've automatically got your window areas, and then you just remove that from the wall area, as well as you can, if you want to get more accurate again, you'd remove your door openings as well, which I think's wise to do. You need to know the number of doors in the model anyway. Well, we always put the doors in our eTool models, although they very rarely meet the cut-off rules, but we usually do it. It's pretty easy to add. So yeah, it's pretty easy to then work out your openings for your internal and external walls. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, it's like I think if I worked on this one, this is a 2-story building. It'd probably take me another 20 minutes to get the takeoff, and then I'm good to go. Start loading things into eTool, and then depending on how much data you get out of it, like if you get for this one, I'm probably going to end up with 20 line items or something. Unless every single wall's a different type, etc. in this tiny little building, then I'm probably only going to end up with 20 or 25 different elements to import from this takeoff. And I'll probably, if it's that many, I'll often just add them, rather than import them. I'll just sort of go into eTool and add them. But anything more than that, I'd probably definitely, format it a little bit in Excel and then import it. And you can import different files. You can do one for your floor areas and one for your wall areas, and chunk it up like that as well. So a few different options there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That looks good. Actually, I just installed SketchUp, so I hope it's going to work fine.
Great.
And start using it. We did start using we did start the quantities takeoff for this project. So I've already progressed with Adobe Reader.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's almost done now. So from the next projects, I will definitely try to use SketchUp.
Yeah. Well, I think give it a go and then give us the feedback. Because I'm happy to. I'm very happy. Like, it does seem a little bit.
It keeps things more tidy, definitely. Instead of having like 10 stands of different dimensions. Just have those boxes, and then you get a report with areas for each layer.
Yeah.
It keeps the drawing much neater, let's say.
Yeah, yeah, potentially. But I mean, we've been using this method for probably 8 years or something at eTool, and it does surprise me that we haven't come across a better system yet. So I think there's a couple of tools.
Have you ever used Bluebeam?
Yeah, we did use that for a while. We had issues with.
I think it's really powerful, but it's also a bit expensive.
It looks like it's about the same price as SketchUp. When we were using it, though, I don't know whether
using it in my previous company.
Yeah, right.
I haven't used it for exporting of the markups, but I know it can. I've seen people doing it, like modeling, drawing lines and areas within the drawing, and then there's definitely a function to export all these markups in Excel.
Yeah.
So you will be able to get, in a similar way as you did it here with the plugin.
Yeah.
Give you like a total area for each layer.
Yeah.
So that should be useful as well. I mean, I could probably start using it as a trial. I think that they offer it as a trial for 30 days and see if how it compares with SketchUp.
Yeah, well, literally, when I was when I first sat down, and because I saw your email and message in the chat, and I'm just going to stop the recording